as we started UFC Gym, we knew it. We had to change the way that we looked at fitness, right? It wasn't just about the traditional fitness consumer that wanted to come do 20 minutes of cardio and 20 minutes of muscle resistance training. It was about the consumer that was trying to intersect a life path of not just physical accomplishments, but mental accomplishments.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.
Welcome to Unfinished Business. I'm your host, Dave Sliman. And as you know, we explore the stories, strategies, insights of visionary leaders of all industries. And today we have a super strong guest. Adam, no pun intended on that one. Okay.
I like the pun. You can use the pun if you want. The strong guest.
All right. He is the CEO of UFC Gym, global powerhouse in MMA-inspired fitness. I think 37 countries. But Adam brings over 25 years experience in the health and wellness and fitness industry. We actually crossed paths years ago. We were talking about that. We'll dig into that a little bit more. But he's a keynote speaker. He knows how to lead. He inspires people individually, and he builds teams to be the best that they can be. And Adam's on the forefront of revolutionizing the fitness and wellness industry. And I want to dive into this incredible journey and hear his story. And I want you all just to sit back, relax, and enjoy this one. So, Adam Sedlack, welcome to Unfinished Business.
I love being here, and it's been good to kind of get connected with you and hear a little bit about your story and your platform. So let's go. Let's dig in.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. So let's bounce back to the beginning, okay? And I think you and I are you're 50, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you and I are the same age. And we were running through maybe some early in our career, we were running through some of the same channels. But let's talk about what inspired you into the fitness industry and how you've gotten to this point today. I mean, I know it's a big question, but kind of a little bit of background for the listeners.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I wish I had an inspiring, motivating answer, but it really isn't. I got in the gym business really when I was 21 just to meet girls, and I thought it'd be great to work out and connect with as many people as I possibly could. Never did I think it would turn into a career. As a matter of fact, I still get questions from my parents what I'm going to do when I grow up and get a real job, right? So. Now, listen. When you start in the fitness business, a lot of us, I think, in our early 20s, once it gets in your blood, it's very hard to leave it because there's something about I don't know if it's the dopamine that it creates or whatever it is, but there's something about engaging with consumers, engaging with people, being around people that are always aspiring to be fit. It's intoxicating. And when you start having an opportunity to meet people around you that are great people in the industry, you realize that the industry has created great leadership in general. Yeah. And so that becomes intoxicating. So I think, for me in the early years, it was first and foremost, there was no necessarily specific passion that I had to say, I'm going to do this for the next 30, 40, 50 years. It was a summer job that turned into an ignition of passion that said, man, this industry is great. I can make good money. I can come to work in sweats, and I can, train and work out in the morning, train and work out in the evening, and be around a bunch of people that can help me become better at who I can become inside this industry. And it took off. And so, it started in 24-hour fitness / family fitness back in 1994, which I know ages us a little bit, right? And then,
yes, it does.
And then, I got the bug, and there was a lot of great people that was put around me, including my wife, who was working basically at the same gym that I was. And that power and circle of association started to take form where there was not only great peer-to-peer connection, but there was good mentorship that was provided to me. And holistically, you just felt like it was home. And I mean, you go through the competitive states of going after trying to be number one and win the awards and, do all those things to try to create professional progression. And that was my passion. And listen, a lot of mistakes were made as a kid. I was arrogant. I was sometimes cocky. I was very career driven, lots of work ethic in regards to trying to outwork people. Myself, my wife, and my 4 kids moved 20 times across the U.S. for opportunity. Wow. And, when Mark Mastroff said, hey, we have an opportunity here, an opportunity there, it's good for progression. It's good to learn different trade areas and markets and learn different cultures based on where you are in the U.S. And it was incredibly beneficial from that point of view. And then
let me cut in here though, Adam. I want to dive into. I want to unpack this a little bit because you bring up a good point. You've had this experience now of traveling, for your job, and there's some people out there who are at the job at that point in your life. Because your kids obviously were growing up, your wife, how did you manage that? If you could give someone advice who maybe looking at an opportunity to go to another state, another part of the country, or maybe even another country for that matter, what kind of advice could you give them in looking into this?
Well, there's mistakes that I made while I was evolving and adapting, right? I became too compulsive professionally, and my work-life balance was completely skewed. Good. The biggest mistake I made in my early years was I didn't bring my wife and my family in, and I didn't integrate them correctly into my professional ambitions. I almost treated it as separate. So I would work and spend all the time at the gym, and then I would come home and I would just have a complete separation. So I almost lived 2 different lives. And it created distraction, frustration, anxieties that weren't needed. Once I matured a little bit, I learned that my kids and my wife wanted to be part of the journey, not separate from the journey. So I was able to bring them into the journey where they started working for the gyms. They started working out. My wife became a figure pro and ended up competing at the biggest scale in women's bodybuilding. And once they all became part of the world, the journey was amplified. And so now I didn't feel alone as I was driving my professional ambition. I felt incredibly supported just by being okay to bring them into the experience, and being okay that sometimes I'm not going to, have amazing business results, and they're going to be okay with it when I don't have amazing business results, and they're going to support it. When I do have amazing business results, they're going to love it. So I think it's about it's connecting your family into the journey. And then also it's incredibly important when you can focus on your family that you're present. And I think so many of us lack the ability to be present in our lives. And that's also professionally, right? If you get distracted personally, it's sometimes hard to be present professionally. And so presence is a key element that so many of us miss in today's world because we're so busy. We're so busy reacting versus being there at the moment in the experience and making sure that you're appreciating and enjoying every step of the way. So I think those are the big things, right?
That's fantastic.
You bring them into your world and you're constantly present and you maximize life every second of the day.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I had a similar situation when I was growing my last company, and my wife had come in to do some work with us, and then she got a real understanding of some of the things that were going on a daily basis too. So there was this understanding versus coming home and maybe being a little bit stressed about what was going on. She could understand and relate a little bit more to what was happening, and it really actually strengthened our relationship. There were some trying times on that as well. I'm not going to say it was all easy, but I think you bring up a fantastic point to really be try to be as transparent as you can, especially when you're moving and doing things like that with your family. A great talking point, great feedback, and a really nice way to unpack that and deliver it to somebody who might be going through this. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. The industry you've been in, it's changed a lot. Listen, you and I were in Scottsdale, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona at the same time, working for the same organization. We probably crossed paths at some point, but more importantly, talk about the industry and how it's changed for you now, and then we'll talk about future forward information as we go.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think a lot of us know industry-wise the major changes around not just the value proposition and experiences for consumers, but the way you do business is continuously changing. And part of that is driven by politics and taxes and those types of variables. And part of it is just driven by consumer need and consumer demand. So the beautiful thing that we all know is fitness engagement's continuing to increase and improve, and the need for gyms and the need for fitness and facilities will always be there, no matter how great AI becomes and no matter how great technology becomes. That interpersonal connection that happens in gyms is very unique, and it makes us excited about where the industry is continuing to go. When you go back to the early 90s, of course, when you think about fitness, I mean, it was very, very basic, right? When you compare it to today, we didn't have studios, and we didn't have really even discussions around value proposition points. You had group fitness classes with the knee-high socks on, and step classes, and those types of things. I mean, for heaven's sakes, they used to charge membership fees just to use the life cycle, and it's how cardiovascular equipment was not. Right when I was getting into the industry, cardio was starting to become a major feature and expand with major cardiovascular decks. But back in before I got in the industry back in the 80s, of course, cardio was not really something that people drove, and I think as the life cycle entered and as different modalities of cardiovascular became entered into the fitness concepts, people found more creative ways to increase their heart rate. But that really drove the business towards community, and what's the byproduct from great classes is great community. And so when people started figuring out how to take fitness to another level in regards to not just the obvious of benching, 500 pounds, but also but it really up here, right? And really understanding the mental part of fitness and the mechanical parts of fitness, where there's 660 muscles in the body, and these muscles get manipulated in so many different ways, and working out on free weights and machines gets you a certain level of muscle manipulation. But once you really start getting into core workouts and deviation focused fitness strategies, it just changes the way you have to work out. And that really spurred the next generation of fitness from being this, what I call traditional box, to being these very innovative fitness strategies that ended up driving into the boutique business, right? Where you became very much focused on specific value propositions. So man, when you look at 1995 and you look at what was happening there, you had weights, machines, and some group fitness classes. You look at 2024, now you're intersecting technology, individual value proposition-based facilities, continuing to move the needle on fitness equipment innovation. You're intersecting AI, you're intersecting all sorts of technology apps, you're using data to maximize your business results. I mean, the big boss, Dana White, I mean, look what he's doing. He's every day he's sitting in a 33 degree temperature water, right? Trying to make sure that he continues with the amazing results he's getting. So many things have changed, but I love it. The holistic journey is continuing to push the envelope to where we can go. But at the end of the day, I still stand by this. It's people, man. I love working with people, and I think great people just make so much difference in this business. I'm blessed at UFC. My circle of association is so powerful with genuine, people that love this industry and love working with people. And I think at the end of the day, that fundamental's got to remain intact.
It's got to be there. It's got to be there. And you guys talk about a philosophy of train different, right? I mean, that's your philosophy when it comes down to it. How did that philosophy? I mean, you've been involved in the organization and you're leading it. How did that evolve? What's the idea behind that, and what does that mean to both the members and the teams?
It's a good question. When you go back to that 2009 timeframe, we still were in this world of somewhat traditional fitness, and really, some of the studios started to pop up. Right, CrossFit was really emerging significantly around that time frame. And, coming from 24 Hour Fitness, which was an amazing company, especially during the days, from probably 95 to 2007, that company did some just amazing things. And we were so good at this traditional fitness strategy, personal training, and, trying to stay innovative in our workout floors. As we started UFC Gym, we knew we had to change the way that we looked at fitness, right? It wasn't just about the traditional fitness consumer that wanted to come do 20 minutes of cardio and 20 minutes of muscle resistance training. It was about the consumer that was trying to intersect a life path of not just physical accomplishments, but mental accomplishments.
Great.
And so, we looked at that as an opportunity to coin kind of train different, that you just don't want to come in and train like everybody else. You want to come in and train to find the best possible version of who you can become physically and mentally. So when you think about a UFC fighter, right, when they prepare for a fight, it's 12 weeks out, right? And that's when their fight camp starts. And when they go to this fight camp, they have a gym, and then they put about 10 great coaches around them. There's strength coaches, there's nutritional services, there's even psychologists at times, there's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, all these different modalities of coaches. Their only job is to say, okay, I'm going to get you great at what I do. So when you walk into that octagon, you feel more confident than anybody else on planet Earth that you're going to win that fight. So we thought if we could take that to the masses, the mass gym experience, right, where any customer that's walking in that's used to just saying, okay, pay $20 and you're in working out, can we take them to the next level where not only do they get a great workout, but they get full recovery services like red light therapy, saunas, cryotherapy, compression therapy. Can we get them nutrition in our armbar cafe so they can properly balance out proteins, fats, and carbs? Can we take them at a whole nother level in regards to the way they train? So when they're doing jiu-jitsu and learning those technical moves, or they're doing boxing and they're learning the combos, the 1-2, and they're really understanding how to protect and defend themselves, which puts you in a whole different mental state than before you know how to do that. So now all of a sudden, instead of walking down an alley concerned for your life, you're walking down an alley saying, if somebody wants to attack me, come on, let's go. And you
concerned for them.
You stand a little bit taller, right? You look people in the eye and you just feel better about yourself. But here's what's critical to that. When you feel great about yourself, when you feel good mentally, physically, emotionally about yourself, your entire influence or circle changes the way they look at you. Because all of a sudden you become this emergent force of positivity, energy, where people attract to, right? So you, not only have you affected your life, but you've affected the 30, 40, 50 people around you that you associate with on a daily basis.
That's such a great point. And, I'm not trying to impress anybody, but just impress upon you too. I mean, I am a grinder. I get up, go early, and I grind it out in the gym. But for me, I want to do the toughest thing in the early part of the day, which is that gym. And there's like this morning, I just didn't feel like fucking going this morning. I didn't. But I know when I drag myself in there, and I bust it out. Once I get in there, I'm good, and I bust it out. I come out of there ready to take on the world. And it's such a big point that you make. Your confidence changes, your aura changes, the people around you change. They see that impression that you make, and it really does. So to be able to take that to the masses is such a great strategy, and it's it's got to be hard, a little harder than it sounds, but realistically, I think that's a fantastic approach. How has your leadership changed? Listen, the industry has changed a lot in the years. You've been in the industry now 25 years experience plus. How has your leadership style evolved through all this, through the years?
Yeah. I mean, we all have had to adapt there, right? And I think you can support me on this. When we were in the middle 90s in the fitness business, it was very a driver mentality. It was one way. It was, you're going to go get this done. Move, go. No time for failure. No time to listen, right? It's a very driving based mentality. And really the people that were the A drivers were the most successful because of the way they were able to respond to that. As years evolve and cultures and people evolve, the employee changes, their values change, right? And we're seeing that today. I think we can all agree that COVID was a big impact on the way people looked at work. And even pre-COVID, there were challenges. And by state, it's interesting when you go to individual states, there's actually different working patterns, right? There's different work ethics and in regards to their localized cultures. And when you go to different countries, it's even more different. And so the ability to lead went from doing a lot of talking and now doing more listening. And it's hard. It's incredibly hard. And I'm a big believer in emotional intelligence and being aware of how one individual can impact others, but more importantly, how others can impact me, right? And so, based on how you internalize information. And so the ability to listen and understand why people think what they think is now more important than anything else in regards to leadership, right? You need to understand what motivates people to make the decisions that they're making. Whether it's, listen, if somebody's not working to their full potential, is it their fault or is it my fault as the leader? Maybe I'm not connecting with them. Maybe I'm not listening to them the right way. If it's somebody that has a lack of skill set to do their job, they're not properly prepared, is that their fault or my fault? And we don't often like to say this stylistically, but listen, the days of everybody wanting to work 15 hours a day like you and I did as we were growing up in the industry, those days are gone. It's gone from maybe 60, 70% wanting to do that. Now maybe 10% of the people want to do that. But it doesn't mean that these people that don't want to do it aren't great people. They just have a different set of values, and there's still a lot they can bring to any organization. But you got to learn how to have a personality approach where it's not one size fits all. It's, I'm going to talk to you differently than I'm going to talk to somebody that wants to work 20 hours a week and they care just about, that 20 hours at the job and then they want to get home. I need to talk to that person a little bit different. So I think the biggest leadership transition has been the ability to listen and have different conversations based on the profile of the team member, so I can get the most out of that particular team member to help drive our brand.
It's a great point. And ultimately, you have to have the good fundamental strategies, right? You have to have the base and the core strategies of what you want to accomplish. But it's true. We all, that's one thing I've learned through the years myself. Actually, we're very aligned on that we're all humans, we're all wired differently, and we don't fit inside this box. You can play to people's strengths, and one person can do maybe can approach it a little bit differently than another, but they get the same result. And earlier in my career, I struggled with that, and it sounds like you might have too.
I did. Yeah. I had trouble connecting with people that didn't see it the same way that I did. Yeah. As a district, I still remember this as a district manager for 24 Hour Fitness in the Midwest. I went out there and I was on the West Coast, and there's two different sets of work strategies from West Coast to the Midwest, right? And I found it early on that there was a certain percentage of people in the Midwest that wanted to work till 6 o'clock and then they wanted to be home for dinner. Whereas the West Coast, it was a much smaller percentage. So I had to modify the way that I drove the team members. And I did it through a painful example. I did it through HR because I was being too hard of a driver in those early years. And I didn't understand how to have different conversations. So I got a call from the company president at that time. And he said, listen, you can't talk to these two people that are reporting to you because they're complaining that you're too aggressive and you're being too direct and applying too much pressure, and they're having trouble with their personal life. And I started automatically having a personal defense to that, right? I was trying to rationalize it, by saying, well, this is what's best for the results. I didn't think about what's best for the person at the time, right? And that's the most valuable lesson. If I would have been more sensitive to what's best for the individual and married that what's best for the company, I wouldn't have had the issue. So it was a big point of graduation for me to understand how to look at these specific profiles. And I'm sure, again, you've gone through the same thing.
Yes.
And because everybody has something to offer. You just got to find what their biggest potential is, what they want to do, what they're most passionate about, and get the most out of them. But to do that, they got to be in the right environment.
Yeah. You got, again, it goes back to playing to their strengths. And I do believe in that. But it also comes back to what you were talking about earlier. Listen, I'm a big believer in this, and I live by this in all the teams and professionals that I work with and train. In the beginning, you do have to work harder in order to earn the right to work smarter. And I do remember those days you and I are grinding it out for 50, 60-hour weeks. And in that business, and I'm not saying that people have to do that right now, but when they are present, like you said, when you're present and doing what you're doing, work hard, because you will ultimately earn that right to work smarter as you go along. I'm a big believer in that. So I think that's a great point. So listen, you do some keynote speaking, and what are your messages usually to the audiences you speak to, and your philosophy in business and life in general? Because I know they mesh. Whether someone says, "Oh, your business life, personal life," you talked about it. Think they do mesh. What are some of the philosophies that you really try to drive on your audiences?
Well, and there's also, I think to our earlier point, I think this is important.
Yeah.
When anybody's starting a career or you're opening your own business and you're in startup mode, it can be a personal startup mode or it can be a business startup mode. If you're not putting the work ethic and you're not willing to commit yourself and dedicate yourself, don't expect great business results. Expect average or substandard results. You got to be willing to do stuff that other people just will not do. And if you're, and I like the way Dana White says this, and he says it this way: if you're a savage, you can take over the world today, because there's not that many savages. Yeah, there's not many savages anymore. So I would really, for those people, and I'm sure a lot of people that listen to your podcast are savages, right? That's why it's a sales performance driven podcast, because it's about performance. And so this is a great time for those people. This is one of the biggest opportunities ever in mankind, that if you separate yourself with work ethic and commitment and dedication, that you literally can take over the world that you're in. So just something for us all to consider, right? As much as we want to adapt on our leadership styles and get the most out of part-time team members and so forth, it also creates even more opportunity for the savage.
I think I've heard him say this too, and I think it was the one I heard where he said, he was referencing even younger people these days. He said, "Listen, if you're just a savage as a younger person right now, you will steamroll people." Okay, and I think you said it. You have to be willing. Listen, if you want to be ordinary, that's fine. It's okay. I'm not right. Taking anything away from that. Okay, that works for some people. If you want to be ordinary and you want to be average, that's okay. You'll do the things that just you can do enough and you'll be okay, right? You'll be good. But if you want to be different, if you want to excel, if you want to be above the crowd, you just have to do a little bit more, okay? And I'm not saying a little bit more here once, a little bit more here. You have to do a little bit more here. You have to do a little bit more here. You have to do 5% more here, 10% more here, 15% more here, 2% more here. And what happens is that compound pounding adds up and it starts building. And I think that's one of the big challenges I see these days for the younger culture, and not even such younger culture, but culture in general, right? You have the TikToks, you have the Instagrams, you have all this stuff, and you see these guys flying around in a car, they're flashing their money, and they think that comes easy or it comes quick, and it does not. It's time. It's that stuff is out the window for me. It's the moments they really should be showing on that is when someone's about to go bust and they leverage money down on a business and they break through it, or they're getting their ass kicked one day and it's a day they just don't want to do it, but they get up and do it again. Like those are the things that need to be celebrated more on those sites, which I do in my feeds. I see a lot more of that stuff, but it's very, you can be, the impression can grab you a little bit when you see the guys rolling around the Ferraris, and like the one guy walking up to somebody and he goes, "Hey, what? I see you drive a nice car. What do you do?" And then the guy explains what he does, and it makes it look like this guy just waved the magic wand and he's got this Ferrari. What he really doesn't have time to tell you is all the grinding he's been doing throughout those years.
When Dana White was starting UFC, or really took possession of it and made it what it was today, he didn't sleep. I mean, he was going 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it was only about the success of that particular brand. People don't know, and I don't know to the full extent everything he did, but I've read on it, I've talked to him, and I've heard stories. And you have to be extraordinary to be able to take a brand like that and move it to the next level. And that's exactly what he did. And that's what it took. And he put a lot of like-minded people around him. And he created what we know today as the UFC. So, I think we all have to, take a look at those that are the most successful and understand what they did to be able to get their, professions or their companies to where they're at. I also want to raise this thought process, right, which is really about why is sometimes it okay for people not to be super competitive and have extreme work ethic? Well, so much of this, and I don't want to get overly political, but this whole woke movement, all this crap that we're spending 90% of our energy on a 2% issue has created the rationalization not to provide massive work ethic, massive competition, massive commitment, because we're too afraid to hurt people's feelings. And those days are really hurting business culture, or that environment's really hurting business culture. To me, when people's feelings get hurt from a business perspective, it's because they didn't come prepared. They didn't do the same work ethic. They didn't have the same work ethic. They don't have the same skills because they didn't put time and energy into, maximizing and improving their craft. And so now let's not hurt their feelings. Let's give them a participation trophy for being involved. No. We need to make sure from a business point of view, the people that do have the work ethic, the people that are determined, that are focused, you get recognized and you get paid and you get compensated because you're extraordinary, you're unique, you're somebody that is doing an amazing job. And if the people that are the role players, they get offended by that, so be it. Because those performers, for me, in my business, in UFC Gym, if I didn't have those performers and overachievers to inspire me every single day, and I have a lot of them in this company, it'd be a much different place, and I would not be a happy person. So, I just want to make sure that that's brought up too, is that, there is nothing given to you in life, and those that think they should get it for free, you're absolutely insane. And I think we need to continue to create that environment where the people that work their asses off, that put time and energy into what they do, they still need to be highly recognized and inspired on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think it starts early too. I have a 12-year-old son, and I was just having this conversation with him a week ago. because, he's turning 13. That's kind of an, middle school. It's kind of an awkward time where they're trying to find their way. And we were having a conversation, and I was being tough on him in a certain respect, but I really tried to give him an understanding, and I don't know if he got it, but the idea of why I was being tough, because I told him the world out there, it is not an easy place. Okay. It is not an easy place. And as you grow up, what I'm trying to do is instill some pillars with you so that when you get out there on your own, that you're going to be stronger. And I felt like it clicked a little bit, and I'm going to keep instilling that. But you're right. And it starts early. I mean, and you can learn it at any time. But realistically, I think it comes down to one word, and that's responsibility. I think the change in the last 4 years, Adam, I think in the last 4 years, it's been a heck of a lot more apparent, is almost for me a way not to take responsibility. And I think if you can take responsibility, if more people can start taking more responsibility for either the environment they're in or the actions they're taking, that some of this stuff is going away. Do you feel it's changing at all? Do you feel it's changing right now?
You mean in terms of people taking responsibility?
Yeah. Do you see a little bit of a turn at this point, or are you still?
I think that's what the election told us. I think, and again, I don't want to get super political.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
But the election told us that people are tired of people not taking responsibility. And I think that distraction is going to be recognized going forward. And I think there's going to, whether you agree or disagree with the election results, and I go to Joe Rogan a lot on this thing, right? Joe sometimes got some bad rap because they would take stuff out of context and try to create clickbait from it, right?
Yep.
But what does Joe really do? What does he stand for in his podcast? He just raises points of contention and things that are key points that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And he tries to get as many people talking about one thing as possible. And he loves having different points of view, right?
Yes, he does.
Science point of view, versus spiritual point of view. He'll bring everybody together and he'll give his point of view. And he tells his listeners, you form your opinion based on everything that we brought to you. He's not going out and saying, like this woke movement of here's what you got to believe in and don't let anybody talk. And you're the only one talking and you need to express your views. He's going out there and saying, let's get as educated as we possibly can through facts, through opinion, through subjectivity. And let's formulate opinions based off of that versus the clickbait world that we're in today, which has completely changed the direction of how media gets presented, right? It's just life has changed. So I do agree the last 4 years, we've seen a huge movement with how people receive information and how people give information out. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I think, I always say this, it's not time that you need to make a decision. It's information you need to make a decision. Yeah. And no, I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan as well, and I like it because he's okay at taking different perspectives. He wants to put the information out there whether he agrees with it or not, and I am totally aligned with that. I think it's fantastic. Listen, this has been a fantastic interview, Adam. I want to ask you another question before we go here. Actually, a couple, but for aspiring entrepreneurs, leaders, making their mark. What's the most important lessons, you've learned through your journey in giving advice to somebody who's, going down this path at this point?
Yeah. So when you're starting a business, I think there's a few things. I think one is the people that you have around you. It's incredibly difficult to start a business in general. If you're doing it by yourself, it is borderline impossible. You need to understand banking, finance, real estate, contracts, capital opportunities, how to market and, sales and marketing propositions. There's so many things out there. And the problem is, as an entrepreneur, you could probably do all of them yourself. But how great are you going to be at each one of those areas?
Great point.
Versus if I have people around me, whether they're friends, family, or professionals, consultants, and I plug and play experts into each one of those vehicles, I'm now going deep and narrow on every key proposition within my P&L, right? So if it's real estate, I have a real estate expert. If it's operations, I have an operations expert. If it's finance, I have a finance expert, right? I can't sit here and talk to you about GAAP accounting for the next 10 minutes, but I have somebody that could talk for 24 hours around GAAP accounting as an expert, right? So I think if you're an entrepreneur, I think it's the circle of association you have around yourself that has expertise of things where they can go deep and narrow to help you make great business decisions. I think number 2 is be careful on the amount of debt you put on your business. I've seen successful businesses making money just get drowned by debt because they put too much debt on the business. It's a good business, good concept, good real estate, but maybe they have, maybe they're making $35,000 a month in profit and 4-wall profit, but their debt is $50,000 a month. That's a no-win scenario, right? And so you got to be very cautious how you financially set up your business. I think the next thing is to really make sure from a business plan perspective, you always got a plan on your entry and you always got to say, what's my exit? And sometimes your exit is never to have an exit. Sometimes it's a lifestyle job that you just want to keep, which is okay. Sometimes your exit is to sell to a private equity firm for $1 billion, and that's okay as well. But you need to understand what that journey looks like, and you need to be able to map that out, because that's going to give you the expectations or the steps of what you need to do from an entrepreneurial perspective to be able to hit that expectation. And so I think that's incredibly important. I think you said this earlier, which I completely agree with. After you have that all in place, you have to establish your fundamentals, your non-negotiables. Every business is different and unique. My wife just opened up this great crystal and coffee shop called Manifested Lab, and it's a beautiful little place. If I operated that like UFC Gym, we wouldn't survive. So it's completely operated differently. And there's core fundamentals on that business that have to be attacked. UFC Gym, there's core fundamentals that have to be attacked. And then the key is being able to, translate and continue to amplify that even through growth. And so I think if you got good people around you and you establish good core fundamentals, it puts you in a very high likelihood of success. And then it's earning the right to continue to grow and expand from there.
I love it, man. I love it. I love, the exit strategy, thinking about that. I mean, day one, I always tell people, when you start your business, day one, you're planning your exit strategy at this point. At some point, that's what it's going to be. And then the big one is, you're right, surrounding yourself with great people. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's people who are successful or ones that are really good at what they do, they want to help. They want to help people. So tap into your networks. Ask people, ask professionals if they know a professional, if you do need help, if you're starting business. I think that right there summed it up so perfectly, Adam. I have really enjoyed your passion, your perspectives in this interview, your experiences. I think it's been fantastic, and our listeners definitely are going to get a lot out of this. Where can they get a hold of you? If someone wanted to reach out to you and maybe just ask you a few questions or connect with you, where could they find you, Adam?
I'm on everything. I'm a highly social media driven CEO. So I kind of track my world travel, whether it's LinkedIn or I'm CEO UFC Gym on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. I'm even on Pinterest, for heaven's sakes. And so I'm not hard to find, and love. I got a great network of people, especially in this industry, that I love to socialize with. And so, welcome more friends. You can never have enough.
That's the truth, man. That's the truth. Listen, Adam, I want to thank you for being here. As always, this show is really built on great guests, just like yourself. So I want to thank you for being here and really sharing your experiences. Now, everybody out there, please like this show, share this show, Unfinished Business. As you know, Adam's not finished. he's got some gas in the tank. I know that for sure. And he's not finished with his path and journey. So I'm excited about the future for you as well. And I just want to thank you for being here on the show.
And I thank you for having me. And I want everybody that has a UFC gym close to them, mention this podcast. We'll get you a week for free on me. You go see what training at UFC gym, how it's different, how it's unique. It will change your life. Go check it out.
I love it, man. I love it. He is Adam Sedlack. I am your host, Dave Sliman. Again, like this show, share the show. We appreciate your support. Wealth, health, and success to all of you out there, and we'll see you next time.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.